My name is Randy Howell, and you're listening to the Faith and Fishing Podcast.
Welcome to the Faith and Fishing Podcast, where every episode I'll bring you an interview with a member of the fishing community, and they'll be sharing their faith stories and fishing memories with you. I'm your host, Cam Steele. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Faith and Fishing Podcast. I'm Cam.
And I'm Robert.
And we've got a saltwater episode for y'all this time, so I'm excited about that. And I will say again, this episode, if I disappear, that's because I am again on daddy duty. But yeah, man. So Robert, how's it going?
Man, it's going good. It's going real good. Same as last week. I haven't been able to get out fishing any, but chasing my kids around, watching some ball. Got a couple tournaments this weekend, baseball and softball, and a couple football games to go to. So busy as always. Ready to talk about some saltwater fishing and ready to roll.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I took Henry out fishing for the first time last weekend, and that was pretty awesome. It's funny. He ate more bait than the fish did. We were using loaf bread. My grandpa taught me kind of indirectly that whenever you're fishing with young kids, use bait that they can eat too, and you don't have to worry about it if they're over there popping it in their mouth and stuff. But yeah, he had a good time. We didn't catch anything. That we were using one of those little kid caster things, and even if we did get a bite, there's no way we could have felt it and all that good stuff. But it was funny. This little kid had no fear whatsoever. He ran down and stared down a flock of about 12 geese and honked at them from about 5 feet away. And
that's the good stuff right there.
And he's over there. This bird's bigger than he is, and he's sitting there honking at it, and it's hissing at him. And I'm like trying to get in between him and steer him back towards our bench. And it's we may end up having to wait till he's a little bit better of a listener before we try again. But it was an awesome time, man. So yeah, we're gonna jump into a little bit of quick housekeeping thing. So we have a pretty awesome announcement this time, right?
Yeah. Got to team up with Omnia Fishing. That's something that me and you both have been involved with at the ambassador level, and got to start a partnership with them and tell us more about it.
Yeah, so Omnia Fishing is a tackle shop out of somewhere in Minnesota, and I should have looked up the city, but I don't remember. But somewhere in amongst all of those lakes up there. But they have this ambassador program that is really awesome, where you can send in fishing reports from the lakes that you fish, and if based off of how many you send in and how many are quality and stuff, they start putting you at an ambassador level. And then at certain ambassador levels, when people click on the baits that you recommend for that lake and purchase it, then you get credit through Omnia. So that's pretty awesome. And they super fast shipping. If you order before 1 o'clock on Central Time, it ships the same day. So really awesome selection. So yeah, if y'all go check out omniafishing.com, use promo code FNF15, and it'll get you 15% off of your first order. So that definitely highly recommend that. They've got a really, like I said, really awesome selection, and just that ability to shop lures that are working in your lake is a really, really, really awesome program they've got going on there. So definitely go check that out.
Yeah, and anywhere across the country, if it's a decent sized lake, there's going to be an ambassador that fishes that lake, and you can go in, you can search it by lake, you can search it by state. You can go to each ambassador's page and see what all lakes that they have fished and what they recommend. So it's a really cool way to kind of get some insight on whatever body of water you're fishing. I know you can go to Cam's ambassador page or my ambassador page, and you can see the lakes that we fished and the reports that we've done. So it's to just give you some insight, especially if you're going somewhere that you don't fish a lot, and you can go on there and look up that lake, and you can see all the reports for that lake and get some ideas of what may work and see if there's something that fits your style of fishing. And you can order the baits right from the reports, which is a cool deal too.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I will add my ambassador link and Robert's ambassador link to the All Things Faith and Fishing link down there, so that you can go and see what we fish and like what we recommend in certain lakes, what has been working for us at certain times of year. So yeah, definitely go check them out. Robert, do you have any more housekeeping stuff to jump into?
Oh man, that's it.
All right. Well, let's hear a word from some sponsors that not Omnia, because we don't have a ad recorded for them yet, because we just found out we all got all of this finalized today. So so let's go ahead and hear from some sponsors, and we will get our guest introduced for this week.
Savior Outdoors gives me confidence that no matter what happens, what I take on the water is coming back home with me. With retrieval devices for fishing rods, bow fishing bows, action cams, and even one that can be attached to your other gear, they've got your whole arsenal covered. When one of these devices goes in a drink, it releases a float attached to your gear by 60 feet of line so you can get it back, and the pressure-sensitive filter means that you don't have to worry about rain or dips in the water while landing a fish. At SaviorOutdoors.com, that's SAVUR Outdoors.com, you can use promo code FNFP15 to save 15% and try them for yourself. Atollas, based out of Charleston, South Carolina, is an eyewear accessory and gear company focused on enhancing your time on the water. Their floating sunglass retainers are the most technically advanced around. Over 5 years of engineering, testing, and exhaustive feedback from paddlers, anglers, and watermen have resulted in a patented design in a class of its own. They're incredibly light and comfortable, built for durability, sport a sleek, minimal design, float virtually all brands and models of sunglasses, and they're backed for life. So if you break them, Atollas will replace them. No questions asked. Whether you're fishing, kayaking, or boating, Atollas will save your shades from the drink. Head on over to atollas.co to check out their gear and use promo code faithnfish15, that's faith the letter N, fish the number 1, 5, at checkout to save 15% on your order.
All right, and I will add to that Atollas ad, since we are going to be talking a lot about fly fishing this time, to check out their fly caddy. They got a clip that goes on your hat or on your visor in your truck that you can carry your favorite flies in, and they have some programs that they match up with a freshwater and a saltwater local fly tyer down in the Charleston area. That whenever you order it with that program, you end up getting some of their flies. So definitely check that out. I know they still are out of stock of the actual sunglass retainers, but definitely check out that fly caddy. So so Robert, are you a fly fisherman?
I used to have a fly fishing rod in the garage. My dad had it when I was a little kid, and I used to get it down and try to figure that thing out. Never figured it out, and I have not attempted it as an adult. But I do like to fish some fly type lures on some small spinning stuff, because there's just something about a lure that's floating on top of the water You throw it under some trees, you're almost always going to get bit on it. So I'm very intrigued by it, and also the saltwater side of it. So it's definitely something that's on my radar.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in that weird place of I want to try it, but I also don't need an additional additional money side of this hobby. Um,
I'm with you.
and I know me, and I know once I dip my toes in it, like that will be it, and I'm just gonna jump headfirst into it. So, but yeah, so this time we have someone who is well versed in both fly fishing and saltwater fishing uh, for inshore saltwater. Um, so we've actually known each other for a while. There was actually a year where I can't remember exactly what age group it was, but it was early middle school. We had a dorm of guys at camp that we were the counselor for, and it was funny. So we've got Travis Harrison in. Uh, Travis is a morning person, or at least was at the time, and at the time I would definitely was not. And I told all the kids, I was like, listen, if it is before 5 a.m., you come and get me, and it'll be all good. You will have to touch me to wake me up, but it'll be all good. You wake Travis up, he'll be grumpy. If it is after 5 a.m., you get Travis because I'm going to be grumpy. Travis, man, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Actually, the first podcast I've ever done, so a little nervous, a little excited, so we'll see.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, so to get us started off, go ahead, introduce yourself to our listeners, and just kind of tell us who Travis Harrison is.
Well, as you said, I'm Travis Harrison. Born and raised in LaGrange, North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina. I grew up doing all types of fishing, inshore, freshwater, saltwater. Didn't really matter as long as I was on the water. If it was a pond or creek, river, didn't matter. I've always loved fishing since I was knee high to a grasshopper. But I grew up fishing with my dad and a lot with my granddad and my dad. And, they taught me everything that they knew, and still a large percentage of what I know now. But I would say that they instilled the love for fishing that I know that I'll carry, on to my son, hopefully. Sons, hopefully, one on the way. But yeah, so like I said, I've always loved fishing, and I say that once I got my driver's license, the shift to the coast begun, and I mean, now I still will go freshwater fishing from time to time, but normally I like to have some salt nearby. So, and currently I live about 30 minutes from any fishery in Newbern, North Carolina, and then just an hour or so from the coast and full salt water. But yeah, I mean, I think now speckled trout, redfish, sheephead, flounder, stripers. I mean, anything that swims in the salt, I love to hunt for it and learn more about catching it. I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I've spent a good bit of time in the salt water and freshwater as well. And the more I go, the more I love it. But I will say that since having children, it's made getting out there on the water a lot more difficult. In due time, it'll take, I know. So
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you may not consider yourself an expert, but you're a lot closer to being an expert than myself or Robert. So
Yeah, exactly.
whenever it comes to the either fly fishing or saltwater. But before we dive into all of the questions that I'm sure we both have, kind of tell us about 43.2 fishing and what that's all about.
yeah, so a couple years ago, I was kind of late to the Instagram trend, with a personal.
Me too.
Yeah, personal Instagram. But I got a personal Instagram account, and I would post pictures of fish. And about the time I got Instagram, or shortly thereafter, uh, I've always fished with dressed treble hooks on my mirror lures. I even I'm sure I have one right here somewhere, but maybe I'll tie one on. I don't know, but I've always fished with dressed treble hooks on my mirror lures, and like I said, when we were chatting before the podcast, I see these treble hooks in the store, and they're like $3.50 a piece for one treble hook, and I'm like, I'm not going to pay $3.50 for one treble hook. So I get the foolish idea that I can save money by tying my own treble hooks, and now I'm, a good bit in the hole from all the, time tying only dress treble hooks, and it's completely enveloped my free time. Is fly tying, fly fishing if the wind isn't blowing 30 miles an hour at the coast like it has all summer. But so talking about 43.2 fishing, I had an Instagram page, and that's about the time COVID started, and I hate to even say COVID on the podcast, but it just basically put a wall between all the personal relationships that you had, one-to-one contact in person. I think as a believer in the Lord, that's where you lay your groundwork for, relationships with Christ and relationships with brothers and sisters with Christ is, one-to-one relationships and in-person relationships. But, through COVID, we were social distancing, sent home from work, and, you couldn't go anywhere. So that's kind of where I was like, well, how can I use, the technology that we have available to us to, still share what I believe with, people who are believers and people who are not. That's, my ultimate goal with 43.2 fishing, just to be a positive light for, anyone that sees the content, and just to be a source for, I guess, positivity, and share my passion for what the Lord has blessed me with. I think, outdoors in general is such a blessing, just to see just the craftsmanship that, that it just, I can't even describe to you just all the detail that God put in this world. And you see it every time you walk out the door. So I guess that's the whole point behind 43.2 fishing is just to share that, with as many people as possible. And kind of when I was developing the idea of the page, I knew that I wanted the name of my page. And I'm not sure where the Lord will lead, 43.2 fishing in the future. I don't know if it'll become a full-time job. I have a great job. I love my job. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I love my job. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I can't see the big picture that God has for my life. And through 43.2 fishing, I think he's working through me and 43.2 fishing, and I hope that justice to anything that he has for me in the future. But kind of the background of 43.2 fishing, I think about on the water when I'm out there. A lot of times I fish alone, and there's been some times where you're not catching anything, but you're just at total peace. And I believe that true peace only comes from God, and God is always with you. So no matter what trial you have in your life, no matter what is going on in your life, you can always, in those trials and hardships, you can always have peace. And that's kind of what the gist of the theme verse for 43.2 fishing is, Isaiah 43.2. And I've had tons of people that don't know my page or, have never asked me, or I've never discussed with them what 43.2 fishing is, and they'll say 432 or 42.3 or 423 or all kinds of different things. But Isaiah 43:2 is the theme verse for the page, and what that verse says is basically, like I said, no matter what you're going through, God is with you. And I'll read that verse now. It says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flames shall not consume you." So just applying that to your life, like I said, no matter what trouble you have in life, God is with you. And when you feel you have no friend, God is with you. So I guess, that's the most important message that I'll ever give, whether, people see fly tying tutorials or tackle making videos or anything that I post on this page. The most important thing that I'll ever say is that God is always with you. And yeah, so that's pretty much 43.2 fishing. The most important thing about it. And hopefully that answered your question. But anyway.
That's awesome. All
Yeah,
right.
that's a. Go ahead, Cam. You're good.
No, go ahead.
No, it's just a good story. I did a little research on Instagram and saw the 43.2 and had to dig a little deeper and then found the verse. But that's a great way to get that out there. And I think when those things come into your life and you started that because of COVID and trying to figure out how to get that out there, and just those turning points and when you start something new and it gives you a sense of we're all called to spread the word and to get that message out there, and that's just an awesome way to do it, and to intertwine that with something that you love doing and fishing, and that's what me and Cam do. We intertwine talking about fishing and finding out people's faith stories, and it's just I think you have to find that comfort zone to do that and to get the word out. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, is like, okay, what is my avenue to break the ice with people? Excuse me. But when you can put that into something that you already like to do, it just makes it all the better.
Absolutely, man. So I want to. Sorry, I got to plug my computer in here. Way to be prepared, Cam. All right, so I wanted to ask. So how did tying dressed treble hooks evolve into sheep's head jigs and flies and well, for one, like, how did it go from just kind of tying your own to selling them, and then like how did it evolve into all of this other stuff?
Yes. So actually, I've actually been making tackle longer than I've been tying flies, or tying in general. Back when I was in high school, kind of the same situation. I was a broke high school kid, and I would go to a tackle shop with. At the time I worked at Ken's Grill in LaGrange. For those of you who know it, I worked there from the time I was 15 until, on to my first and second year of like junior college or whatever. Worked there for a long time, and I'd go to a tackle shop and see these jig heads. That was an awesome jig head. At the time, it was a Blue Water Candy X eyeball jig. I don't know if anybody's up here saltwater fishes. It's a great jig head. Won't say anything negative about it. I fished with them, and if I didn't make my own, I would still fish with the same jig now. It's a great. I'm not trying to do a Blue Water Candy ad on your podcast, but it's a great I use it a lot in clear water a lot because it's got a pretty small profile and it's got a good lead keeper that your bait doesn't slip down until it gets pretty worn out. But I would see those jigs, and they were basically at the time they were $1 a piece for one little piece of lead and a pretty light wire hook. And I'm like, I wonder what it would take for me to make that myself. And I bought a lead melting pot, and it's like I want to say it holds 20 pounds of lead, and you can make a lot of 16th ounce and 8th ounce jig heads with pounds of lead. It's a couple thousand probably is what you could make with that. So honestly, like you could buy 20 pounds of lead, which would be probably around $100 or something like that, and pour 2,000 jigs and never have to buy jigs again. But I did that. I still probably have some of the jigs that I made at that point in time 10 years ago. So I just went crazy making on jigs, and I use them, and they work. They work great. So that's kind of how I got started in tackle. And that was the first mold that I got, was a jig mold similar to that blue water jig.
And I'm sorry for interrupting. I always tell people I'm not going to do that, and then every now and then I have to do that. But I wanted to see if you could either, if you were on your Wi-Fi, if you could try going with your cell service or vice versa. You're breaking up a little bit, so I wanted to see if we could get it clearer if possible.
Yes, my Wi-Fi dropped. I'm on my cell service. Let's do back on here.
What a face to freeze on.
Can you guys?
All right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. That sounds smoother so far.
Yes, I won't call out who I have internet. I'm not going to say. I've been used the last several days, and I got a new modem a couple days ago. What's causing it?
And it's actually a little bit worse now than it was. So I did too much tinkering, and now it's gonna be rough.
My Wi-Fi is the problem, not my cell service.
I think it may be where you are too. I think up closer like that, it sounds better. When you lean back, I think that may not be picking it up. Try there.
Can you hear me better now?
So far,
I'm not sure what would be causing the issue with my Wi-Fi. I can step off and look at my modem and see what it's saying.
Okay. Yeah. It always seems to it goes really, really smooth while we're in the green room, and as soon as I press the record button, somebody goes a little off, whether it be you or me or a guest. But
it's just part of the podcast world. I mean, it happens. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I don't know.
You sound great now.
How to improve that, but
it has been worse. I promise.
Yeah, you're good.
Hopefully, you guys can hear me. I don't know how to improve. I'm not a internet.
Going smooth now, so
yeah, okay. It sounds great.
All right, well,
so you start, jigs and pouring that, just getting into that, and how did that, develop into what all the different stuff that you do now?
Yeah, so like I said, I purchased that one mold in high school, and then at the time I was I was catfishing a lot because I lived, back inland about an hour, hour and a half, and on the weekends I'd go catfishing a lot. And same thing, you go to the store and these pieces of lead would be $1 for a 3-ounce catfishing weight. I wonder, I've got this lead pot. I wonder if I can make my own catfishing weights. And same thing, I bought a mold for making catfishing weights, and I don't know. It was almost an instant addiction to say that I caught this from something that I made. I guess probably the only thing that I haven't figured out how to make on my own is the actual hook and terminal tackle and stuff like that. But I don't think I have that desire to purchase wire forms and stuff like that.
Right.
I have looked into it. Don't think I haven't, but yeah, I don't think I'll ever be that. But maybe I can get sponsored by Mustad or something, and they can make custom hooks for me. But yeah, and kind of what you said about selling tackle. I mean, I made tackle for my own tackle for 10 years before I started 43. And I'd give them to my friends, or and they would give me basically what I had in it. I mean, I wouldn't make any money. I'd give it to them for what I had in it, like I said. And they're like, "Man, these are really great jig heads. They should, they were like, you should sell them." And I was like, at the time, I was like, I just didn't even really put any weight to the comments or whatever. But I will say that every time I've never had an issue with anything I've ever made, because when you're making it yourself, you take pride in what the end result is. When you catch your personal best speckled trout on something you made, like there's, and the only one that I will say is as good or competes with that is when you get a message from someone that has purchased something from you or that you gave, and they're like, "Man, I caught this personal best speckled trout or redfish on something that you made," and you're like, "Man, that's you get just as pumped up as if you caught it almost." So that's kind of where that drive happened, and I don't know if you've ever seen. And honestly, it's another opportunity for me to share like the theme of my page. I mean, every package that I have, every label that I make has my information and the Bible verse that 43.2 is based off of. So I don't have my jigs in a couple tackle shops in Eastern North Carolina, and you put a couple thousand jigs in a store or whatever. I mean, not that I sell a ton of tackle, but I mean, you put 1,000 packs of jigs in a store, or 400 or 500 packs of jigs in a store, and every single one of those packs has a Bible verse on the back of it, and you never know. I mean, the person that buys it might tear it off and throw it down in the parking lot, but there's still a Bible verse floating around, and I think that God has the power to take that little piece of trash for somebody on the ground, and just work it for His glory. And I think just knowing that gives me reassurance that I'm doing something that carries weight in this world. I mean, nothing you obtain in this world will be eternal. The only thing that will be eternal is whenever we're called home to heaven, or we die. So I guess that's kind of what I'm working towards. And that's kind of
Absolutely.
develop, selling tackle. I mean, you give stuff to people, and then next thing you know, all right, man, I don't want to take it from you. I'll buy it from you. And then like, well, maybe I can. I mean, I see what I make, and I take pride in everything I make. And hopefully, if anybody that's bought anything from me, they'll tell you the same thing. That I make a good product because I put a lot of time and effort into doing it. and everything I make, if it's not perfect, it stays with me and goes in my tackle box, and you know, expect everything to make like a compulsion before it goes out. So, I mean, you just take pride in anything that you make, hopefully, and I guess that's where self has gotten me, and I don't know where it'll go, but um, I just take it by day, I guess. Um,
Yeah, that's powerful, man.
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know about Robert, but I have a couple questions whenever it comes to the saltwater side of things. Whenever it comes to your jigs, so one that every time I see it, I'm just intrigued by is the jawbreaker.
Okay.
Because I've always wanted to go sheep's head fishing. Yeah, that one right there. Um, so if you're listening, make sure you go watch the YouTube video so you can see the jig. But um, so I've always wanted to go sheep's head fishing, and I just have never done it. So what is it about the shape of the jawbreaker that makes it a sheep's head, like perfect for a sheep's head jig?
um, well, honestly, man, so there's tons of different setups that you can use for your head. Um, I won't say that a jig is the best in every single circumstance to catch your head. Uh, I will say that there are pros and cons in some situations. Um, one being like if it's dead high, you need to downsize your jig as much as possible, because like you see sheep's head, especially the bigger sheep's head, their eyes are like as big as a 50-cent piece. So I mean, they're up there. Like, sometimes people think sheep's head are kind of like lazy trash fish, but if sheep's head fish enough, you'll eventually you'll see them like high tide. You'll see them working the pilings, and you'll never see a sheep's head stay in this place for like an extended period of time. They're always moving around hunting little crustaceans and eating barnacles and stuff off the pilings, but like they're always at competition for the best food, just like any other fish. They're very mobile in the water. They move a lot. You'll go like I've been this year, and one trip I went and I caught 40 sheep's head on this one set of islands. And the very next trip, the next weekend, skunk, nothing. Moved 100 yards, bam, caught 15 sheep's head in 5 or 6 holes. So like they're constantly moving. But as far as the job, there's a bunch of different sheep's head jigs on the market. I won't say that my particular jig, as far as the profile of the jig, like I'm going to be straightforward with anybody that buys anything from me. I won't say that the profile is what sets it apart, but I take a lot more time than some companies paint, like with the paint on my jigs. The paint is very durable on mine, but as far as jigs in general, why they're more successful is that some people use Carolina rigs or double dropper loops or single dropper loops or the free line or use a split shot rig, but in all those circumstances you have a weight going to a swivel to your hook, or basically you have a weight between your main line and the hook. And what that does is from that weight to your main line, if you're using the right amount of weight, is tight. So if a sheep's head came up and ate that weight, you would instantly feel the bite and you'd set the hook. They're never going to do that, but from that weight to your hook, there's how much slack you have. If you have a 1 foot leader, there's that much slack. So when that sheep's head comes and grabs that hook, they're very skilled at taking crabs or whatever you have on that hook off quick. I mean, it's not as quick as people say. You do not have to set the hook before they bite. That's totally false. But they are very good at getting crabs off of hooks. If you don't set the hook in about 2 or 3 seconds from the time they pick it up, the crab's gone and you won't have anything on your hook. And sometimes faster, and sometimes they'll just, if they're really feeding, they'll just grab the crab, suck on it till you set the hook. But that's few and far between. But basically, what I was saying about the weight, when you tie directly to this, eye on the hook, it's a fixed hook jig. So when that sheephead comes and grabs the jig, you instantly feel the bite if your line is hanging vertically in the water column like it should be. So that's the benefit of using a sheephead jig or a fixed hook jig over a Carolina rig or some other rig like that. Now, there are circumstances where Carolina rig will outfish a jig just because sheephead can be finicky sometimes, and they don't want this. I use the lightest jig I can when I'm fishing. Like, basically on a slack tide, I'll use a 1/4 ounce, and then when the tide starts moving, I'll step up to a 3/8, and once it starts moving fast, I'll step up to a 1/2, and then I rarely ever use anything where I fish over like an ounce or maybe 1.5 if it's a really strong tide. But yeah, sometimes they're sometimes they're funny. I mean, they're a really strange fish, and they are challenging to catch sometimes. And then sometimes you go, and as soon as you drop down a pile and bam, they pick it up, and they're aggressive like that. But a lot of times you have to grind to catch them, and you have a lot of ground to be successful, and eventually you'll run across them. So that's
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So I got a couple of things. The first one, I'm going to go back to the kids piece and you talking about the less time when you have kids. It kind of cuts into the fishing time. I have 3 kids, and now they're 18, 16, and 14. So back when they were, let's just say 5, 3, and 1, there's no fishing time. But just to give you a little bit of hope, when it gets a little bit older, and then one of them will be like, "Hey, Dad, you know what? I would really like you to take me fishing." And then you can go to your wife and say, "You know what? Ryder said that he really wanted to go fishing." And then your wife will be like, "Hey, you know what? That's a great idea." So it does turn back around the other way, and in a little bit later, and that will actually get you access to maybe a little bit more fishing time. So I just want to let you in on that. And actually 3 things. I just added another one. So my wife is originally from Kinston, so we've been past Ken's Grill probably 200 times. So that's a pretty cool little spot there. And the other thing I was going to touch on is a lot of her family lives out there, and a lot of them do some saltwater fishing. I do some saltwater fishing, but mainly offshore when I go, not inshore. But I bass fish out of kayaks, kind of like Cam does. But that's one thing that I really want to get into. So I kind of keep up with what's going on down there. And have you seen the redfish that people have been catching lately in like Pamlico and all that area? There's been some, I'm talking about monsters the last few weeks. Have you seen any of those posted up, or no? You got friends, or maybe you even have been out there catching those things?
Yeah, I'm no bull drum expert by any means, but I've caught some and or caught a few, and actually you'll have to go to my Instagram and see. It's been a couple weeks ago now. I actually went and I think I have the bucktail jig that I caught them on. Yeah. Yeah, so I actually went a couple weeks ago, and the night before, same thing. I wanted to make something and catch a bull drum on something I've tied. So I tied this bucktail the night before I went, along with a couple others, and the two that we put in the boat that day were on this bucktail jig. One was the first bull drum I ever caught on a popping cork was 49 inches, and
Wow.
the second one, we didn't measure it. We tried to get them back in the water as quickly as possible, but it was probably 38 or 39 inches, if I had to guess, something like that. But yeah, man, they're a amazing fish.
Yeah.
And right now is peak time. I mean, like
Prime time.
last week and on through mid-October. It just kind of varies from year to year, but they come all the way up the Neuse River, all the way to New Bern, all the way to the high-rise bridge in New Bern. They come all the way up that far, and on select years they'll even go past the high-rise bridge. I've heard tales of them going all the way to the railroad trestle up there, downtown New Bern. But they're awesome fish, and like I said, I'm not an expert. I've only caught less than a handful in my life, but we were fortunate enough to catch land. We landed 2 that day, and the guy with me, that took me on his boat, he's actually the guy that posts on the page. Austin Davis is one of my best friends, a great guy, and we went on his boat, and he had got on them a couple of days before, and they weren't feeding like they were the day that he went. They weren't blowing up the menhaden, busting bait and stuff, but we went out there and blind casted all day long, and we caught the first 2 in the first hour, and then we hooked 2 more and had 1 more takedown, all on popping corks and on my bucktail jigs. It was just kind of a slower day. They like any fish in the salt moves around a lot, especially this time of year. They're kind of in transition between the fall pattern and summer pattern. But those bull drum come up the river to spawn, and they're just pushing up the river, and they're just feeding like crazy. I saw another podcast today, and a guy that is an expert catching them, Mott Ridge Charters. I don't know if you've ever heard of Mott Ridge Charters, but he is good at bull drum, and he called them 50-pound trash cans, I think is what he called them. They just go and just eat everything up the whole river. So that's pretty much what they're doing, is spawning and feeding all the way up the Neuse and Pamlico, and so yeah,
that's pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. Well, I want to. I know we're gonna push it. This is probably gonna be a longer episode unless you tell me that it can't be. But I want to ask about the fly fishing too.
Okay.
I've watched you fish a few times. I know whenever I was working at LaGrange Christian Church, whenever we would go to Camp Caroline, they would have the youth fishing tournaments, and everybody's sitting there, and one kid might catch a croaker or a spot or something like that, and Travis is over there catching flounder and speckled trout.
I won't make a bit on that, but
13.
I was at the top end of the age range, and all those kids were. but anyway.
But yeah. So, when was it that you got bit by the fly fishing bug?
So honestly, man, I've been fly fishing almost as long as I've been fishing. It didn't start in the salt. Like I said, I fish with my dad a lot, and a fly rod, you think of, people casting, like bait fish flies and all kinds of different, flies or stuff in the saltwater. But a lot of people, especially like older generation, like my granddad and, a lot of my uncles, they use a fly rod for fishing like crickets and corks under a fly line or whatever. And basically what you can do with a fly rod, I mean, it's really an amazing tool. You fish it kind of like a brim buster, but when you if you notice with a brim buster, if there are some like low limbs or a dock, like where you want to get under to catch, the biggest brim or crappie or whatever panfish you're fishing for, you can't do that with a brim buster, or I can't. But what you can do with a fly rod is you can do like a roll cast. So once you get your initial cast in the water, you kind of lift your rod tip and get some slack in your line, basically like a J shape going from the tip of your rod down to your like leader or your tippet or whatever you have tied on from your fly line down to your hook. And then you drop your rod tip. I'm not a master at roll casting, but you drop your rod tip and it'll make a loop, and that loop it'll essentially pull your fly leader behind the fly line, and it will just make a perfect roll on the water. And if you use a small enough cork, it'll even lift your cork out of the water, and it'll make a perfect roll all the way out to your hook, and it'll take all the slack out of your line. And you can pretty much, depending on how good you are at roll casting, you can, with a cork, you can add 10 feet to your cast from where the cork was initially sitting, so you can roll cast up under structure. And that's what those old timers do, is
It's crazy.
They'll place the cork where as close as they can, and then they'll roll cast and add a foot and let it sit. And if they don't do anything, they'll add another foot and just work it all the way up under that structure. And that's kind of where I started fly fishing, or using a fly rod, not necessarily fly fishing, but using cricket. First one. So then kind of where it developed is, you see at Walmart little bets, like they're cork, or foam poppers. Kind of where I started actually using a fly with my fly rod is catching panfish and largemouth and stuff with those bets, popping bugs, and they have them all the way up to like big bass poppers and stuff like that. So that's kind of where my fly fishing began, was fishing ponds and creeks and stuff. And that's it kind of just plateaued there for a really long time. I had a fly rod. I kind of would dip in and out of trying to catch stuff in the brackish water or salt water. Never had any success, and honestly still don't have that much success because I don't get to go as much as I need to. And I have a bad habit of like bringing my fly rod with my conventional gear, and you get out there and you're throwing a super spook first thing in the morning, working for redfish or whatever, and first mid slot redfish comes up and blows that super spook out, and you just black out. Like, you don't remember anything about your fly rod until the redfish stop blowing up that super spook. But that's kind of what happens a lot. So what I need to do is just leave everything at home other than my fly box and my fly rod. But
sounds like me trying to get comfortable with a jig. For bass, I'm notorious whenever it comes to power fishing. I like my chatterbait. I love my square bill, and if I've got it tied on the kayak, I'm probably reaching for it after two or three casts with the jig if I have it with me. So I'm not good at slowing down. So I definitely understand that sentiment.
Yeah. Yep. So, but that's kind of where it developed, kind of moving to saltwater, and then once I started making my own dress treble hooks, the kind of same thing. I wonder if I can make my own flies. I have a fly rod, and then I got a couple more fly rods that were suited for saltwater, like entry level. You can spend as much as you want to on a fly rod, all the way up to $5,000 if you want to, but mine are like $300 for the rod and reel, and then a really nice fly line will be $100. But if you take care of it, it'll last you like forever. I mean, you clean it regularly, you apply like fly line conditioner to it, and it'll maintain that fly line for a really long time. So it's honestly cheaper than braided line over time. You replace braided line once a year and it costs $25, but a good fly line, will be $70 to $150, and it'll last you 15 years if you take care of it like you should, especially for somebody that doesn't fish as much as I do. I mean, I'm sure people that fly fish every day go through lines faster than that, but yeah. So
someone who wants to get into inshore fly fishing, and they're interested in going after speckled trout, slot redfish, what size rod should they be looking at?
Personally, I have I have two fly rods that I would call suited for saltwater. I have a 5/6 weight, which would be, you definitely catch redfish on it. I've caught stripers on it, like 23 and 4-inch stripers on it. I've caught good 20 and plus inch trout stripers on that fly rod, a 5/6 weight, and then I have an 8/9 weight, which is honestly probably for speckled trout. Is depending on what you want to throw. You kind of weight your fly rod on the flies that you want to deliver. Because the heavier your fly rod, the heavier the line, which means you can deliver a larger fly in the wind, especially in the wind. If you're fishing in the salt, you got to do a lot. But I would say anywhere from like a 5 weight to an 8 weight would be kind of the range that you would stay in. Most people in the salt that are focusing mostly on redfish, they'll get an 8 weight fly rod, and you can do anything from bass fishing. Like I use my 8 weight casting like big bass poppers and like deer hair poppers and stuff like that. I use my 8 weight fly rod. This one you could throw on a smaller one, but an 8 weight fly rod is a pretty versatile fly rod, but it'll also handle, I mean, you can catch big fish on an 8 weight fly rod as well. You could catch overslot and even bull drum on an 8 weight if you handled them right. But you just have to have enough backing on your reel. Once they take that 90 feet of fly line, normally you'll have 200 yards of like 20 or 30 pound backing on your fly reel. But yeah, so I would say an 8 weight would be a good starting point for somebody wanting to focus mainly on the salt, redfish, speckled trout and stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, there are a few questions that we always ask everybody that comes on the show. And you are no different. So I want to make sure that we jump on that because we're coming up on an hour now, and we're still going. So
normally not long-winded, but when I start talking about fishing, I get wordy. So
for sure. So Robert, you want to get us started off, man?
Yeah. So, when you are out on the water, what are you normally talking about with the people you're fishing with? What's your conversation like?
Well, honestly, I don't know. This is probably a fault of mine. I'm not a conversationalist on the water, really. Normally what I talk about is what do I need to do to improve my success that day. It's almost like I'm in a tournament with myself every time I'm out there. So it's like, if I go here and I hit this spot, I'm like, man, I wonder where we need to go next. It's like, do you want to, switch up our strategy and, try different structure, that I'm just kind of strategizing a lot when I'm out there. But I try not to talk. I try to be successful when I go fishing because I don't get a chance to go that much. So a lot of times, like I said, I'm talking about strategy and kind of where I'm going next. Or a lot of times it's a hindsight. It's like, man, I knew we should have gone to or whatever. But the things I talk about is how awesome that just living where I do, it's really a blessing just being out there, whether you're catching or not. I talk about that a lot. It's just how blessed I feel just to have the opportunity to be out there. And, other things I try not to talk about is work. Sometimes people go with me, and I'm notoriously straightforward, is what my wife said, to a fault probably. But if somebody starts talking about work, I'm like, man, I'm fishing. I'm not working. So we can talk about something else. I'll talk about anything you want to, but I'm not working. So that's kind of my stance on it. But
yeah, that's a good deal.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And what fishing story or memory means the most to you?
I say that's a tough one. I've had a lot of really great memories. I'll say probably a category of memories is any time on the water with family, like with my dad and my brother and my granddad. One particular instance that stands out in my head at the moment, I've had hundreds of trips with my granddad and my dad, mostly speckled trout fishing. I mean, that's kind of that's like my roots in the brackish waters, speckled trout. I mean, within the last 5 or 6 years, I've done a lot more redfish, sheep's head, and stuff like that. But speckled trout is like that's my grassroots or whatever. But me and my granddad went and we fished all day long in Bay River, just probably 45 minutes from my house. And it was freezing cold that morning we got there. I talked him into getting up at dark 30, and we got on the water like an hour before it was even, you could even see, like it was dark. So we get there and he's like, we shouldn't have got here this early. I'm like, no, we're going to catch them. We're going to get them, we didn't catch anything. We caught like 2 or 3 all day or whatever. And I'm like, I push my limits. I'm like, I know I need to be home to my wife, and but I call her and I'm like, hey, we hadn't done anything, but I think it's going to turn on soon,
One more cast.
So that's essentially what happened here is we get to this one area and we've caught them there, several times. We're like, man, we've been fishing all day. We fished a couple passes up this bank, didn't catch them. I was like, well, let's just go back and fish the first half of this bank one more time. We pull up there and I tie on a swim bait. First cast, I catch like a 20-inch trout. Bam, just like that. I'm like, okay, well, I was like, do you want to go ahead and end on a high note, or do you want to try to fish? And my granddad, he says he's ready to go, but he loves it. He loves it just like I do. He's been trout fishing for like literally 70 years. Like he is an old timer trout fisherman. He's been trout fishing. And he was like, well, we'll try, cast a few more times. He throws out there, bam, he hooks up with a 20-inch trout. And from right then until an hour after dark, it was like bam, 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 bam. And we were just catching them like, you couldn't keep your line in the water. You cast it and instantly hook up. They were just almost take it out of your hand. I don't know if either of you have ever caught speckled trout, but they just have a distinct, like when they hit any bait really, but when they hit a moving swim bait, it's just the hardest, like they just pile drive it. It's almost like they see it and they're like, stay right there just a second, I'll be right back. And then they get a running start and just they're like, so that's just memories like that with family. I've had the same thing happen with my dad and my granddad and my brother on the boat, and in a situation like that, it's just, man, it's just awesome, just to be out there with those people that taught you everything that you know about it, and just share them too. So I'd say that was probably,
for sure. There's something special about a speckled trout bite, and I always say, last cast becomes last fish, and last fish becomes I can't leave now, the fish are biting.
Yep.
But yeah, man. So let's jump into our what's your favorite segment. It's self-explanatory. We're gonna ask you your favorite in a few categories, but we are gonna do that right after this.
Whether you're a Ned Rig vet or a finesse fishing noob like me, Jade's Jigs is your source for high-quality finesse jigs that raise the bar by being lead-free. Using a tin bismuth alloy not only makes Jade's Jigs eco-friendly, it also makes the jig lighter so you get the same profile with less weight for the fish to feel. Check out jadesjigs.com, that's JADESJIGS.com, to see their full lineup of jigs, styles, and colors. And since you're a Faith and Fishing listener, you can save 10% on your order by using promo code FNF10 at checkout.
All right, so we're going to get started with what I am assuming is going to be an easy one. So I'm going to lob it up here. What is your favorite scripture?
I wouldn't say Isaiah 43:2.
Okay.
That's an awesome scripture. I mean, I could obviously give you the easy answer there. It's a pretty tough one. It's not a question I take lightly. I would say probably in Matthew. I'll turn there, and on camera I get nervous. I'm pretty much a introvert to the nines, but yeah. Yes, I'd say it's in Matthew chapter 15. I'll read the passage of scripture if you don't mind. It's just talking about kind of, it's when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees about what defiles a human. And basically what he says is that it's not what comes into your mouth that defiles a person, but it's what comes out of your mouth. I don't claim to be, perfect with everything I say. Like I said, I can be very abrasive. I can be coarse. But I do know that, the meditation of your heart is what your mouth will speak. So I'll read this scripture here, and this is Jesus talking to the Pharisees. He says, this is Matthew chapter 15, verse 11. And it says, it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a person. And I mean, it's just awesome how Jesus can put someone in their place with just a few words. But, he says, then the disciples came and said, do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this saying? He said, answered, every plant that my heavenly Father has not planted will be rooted up. I mean, it's just amazing. Like, I couldn't imagine being the disciples when they said the Pharisees were offended. Basically what Jesus said, my heavenly Father didn't plant their offense. They'll be rooted up. I mean, so I guess that would be, I'm not going to say what my favorite scripture is. I mean, if I had to say, I would say that's my favorite scripture, but I think that's a good scripture because it's something that I struggle with personally, and I have to remind myself of what is very important, what comes out of your mouth. You can, with one ill-placed statement, you can affect someone's life forever. Sure. I would say that it's important to remember that it's not what you take in that defiles a person. Well, there's a lot of things that you can take in that defiles a person, but I would say what you say is what defiles a person more so. So I'd say Matthew 15:11 would be a good scripture, one of my favorites anyway.
Yeah, I like that. That's just going to the next one. It's kind of along the same lines, but a little bit different. What's your favorite Bible story?
Favorite Bible story? Actually, just did a Sunday school lesson on this one this past week. Our church, since COVID started, we had to adjust to everything. So we started doing like web-based Sunday school lessons, and one of the passages of scripture was from the prodigal son. I would say, that's a classic. It's almost a staple for a son. But also, thinking of my son and my son that will be here in December. Like you never, my dad. I just think about how much my dad has always told me that he loved me. I have a great dad. I'm going to get emotional talking about it, but I have a great dad, and I have a lot of great male role models in my life that I'm so thankful for. What a blessing it is, and I hope that I can be the same to my son that my dad has been to me. And I guess that's why the prodigal son is such a powerful story to me, that this son basically squandered away half of what his father had worked so hard for. And when he comes home, his dad, the only thing he sees is his son that he thought was dead return. And I know how I would be if my son came home from me not knowing where he is. And it was one of my favorite stories before I was a father, and now that I am, it just kind of reiterated that. So I know Cam and both of you know the same feeling, but I guess that I'd say that was one of my top Bible stories that I love.
Awesome. We're gonna switch over to fishing. So maybe this one will be.
Yeah, get me out. My throat's hurting. I'm fighting back tears over here, so get me off of this.
Yeah, you're sure. So, what is your favorite fish to catch?
Oh man, that is a hard question. Man, I would say I don't. That's a tough one. I would say probably in the last couple years, I would say that I've had the most excitement learning how to catch sheep's head. I'm not a sheep's head expert. I make my own sheep's head jigs because I'm a compulsive maker, and my sheep's head jigs work great. Everybody that I'm proud of. I'm proud of the product that I make, and getting to catch sheep's head on something that I make is awesome. But I guess probably the last couple of years, sheep's head has been probably my favorite, because it's a new challenge that is foreign, and every time you go, you learn something, not only about catching sheep's head, but kind of almost what to look for, even when you're not sheep's head fishing. So anytime I'm down there in the salt, I see a spot that, if I'm flounder fishing around docks or, anything like that, I'm like, man, that I need to put this in my GPS. I'm like, I'm going to catch sheep's head there. And then, you come back 2 weeks later and pull up to this dock and bam, you catch a sheep's head. So, there are things that, that you'll learn to pick out. And I guess, I would say the last couple of years, sheep's head has been, up here in my eyes anyway. A lot of people think of them as trash fish, but if you got on my boat and the first 6 pound sheep's head you set into, that trash fish, that thought would instantly go away, because when you set on a 6 pound sheep's head or bigger, it doesn't matter how tight your drag is. They're going the opposite direction for the first 5 seconds of that fight. So yeah, they're a pretty awesome fish. Yeah. So.
Well, is kind of along the same lines, but I like to word it as, what's your favorite fish to catch or to fish for? So the favorite one you want to trick into biting that, versus once they've already bitten that sheep's head, reeling it in. But what about to fish for?
That one I'd probably have to go a different route. I mean, sheep's head, once I figure out how to catch them on artificials, it's in the works. It's going to happen. then it will almost be impossible to beat sheep's head. And you can catch them on artificials. It's a little bit almost unheard of in North Carolina. It happens, and you can do it if you try hard enough. But yeah, I'd have to say speckled trout on that one, because you can catch them. It just depends on the season of how you catch them. I mean, there's baits that are just my staple sheep's head baits. I use mirror lures a lot year round. You can catch them on mirror lures year round, but I mean, you can catch them on suspending baits, jerk baits. You can catch them jigging directly on the bottom. You can catch them on top water. I mean, you can catch them on soft plastics. You can catch them on a popping cork. I mean, there's infinite ways to catch them, and you have to be ready to adjust to what they want that day, whether it be the structure you're fishing or the depth of water or the water temperature or the wind direction or what bait is around. You kind of adjust and just kind of match the bait that's around. They move around a lot this time of year in transition. Later in the winter time, they'll get in their winter pattern and they'll kind of hang in the same areas a lot, but there's a lot of challenges. You'll have commercial nets and stuff like that that'll get in a creek and wipe them out, so you have to kind of rethink your location on the fly, and just kind of making adjustments like that. That challenge is what makes speckled trout so special in North Carolina. But I'd have to say speckled trout.
Cool.
Awesome. And what about your favorite fish to eat? So living where you live, I know you have a much wider range than a lot of the guests that we get to talk to that are, Wisconsin, where it's walleye or crappie.
Honestly, man, sheep's head are extremely underrated. Probably flounder, obviously that's a staple. They're extremely good, but sheep's head, like, the meat is very firm and doesn't have a very strong fish taste to it. So once you fillet them, there's just a nice, white piece of fish or whatever once it's cooked. And they, like speckled trout, my favorite way to eat speckled trout is fried. I just think that's the best way to eat them. In my opinion, they're, great broiled or grilled or, anyway, but sheep's head, they're firm enough that you can do anything with them. You can throw them on the grill, on the half shell. You can make them in a fish stew. You can, you can fry them, but they're exceptionally good in fish tacos, which is something that I love, fish tacos. And if you like, you put whatever spices you want on them, but you broil them in the oven and make fish tacos with them. And next level. They're extremely good to eat. So
the only time I've ever had sheep's head was in fish stew, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So,
they're
really good. I'll have to try them in a taco, that's for sure.
Yep. All right. What about if we jump on your boat? What kind of snacks? What's your favorite fishing snack?
That's an easy one for me. I would have to say orange Lance square nabs. I've eaten 25,000 packs of those in my life. That with a Pepsi is almost impossible to beat, but I'm a type 1 diabetic. I tell my wife once I get on the boat, I'm not diabetic anymore. And honestly, it's pretty funny. And it's probably because there's no stress, but I have to get insulin for everything I eat. But once I get on the boat, I drink a Pepsi and a pack of nabs, and I almost don't have to give any insulin for it. So I just tell her I just need to go fishing every day, and I won't have to worry about being diabetic anymore. But yeah.
For those of you that are not in North Carolina, nabs are crackers, snack crackers, like peanut butter crackers or cheese and crackers. But out here they call them nabs. So.
Yeah, the Lance, like you said, Lance, the square crackers. I don't know about everybody, but in my family, nabs were the square ones and nibs were the round ones. But Yeah, man. So let's see. I don't want to ask you too many secrets or ask GPS coordinates or anything. No secret spots. But what's your favorite body of water to fish?
Well, I mean, I could say Noose River, and that would, that's from Pamlico Sound all the way to Raleigh. So that's very, very, very indirect. But I would say, honestly, though, probably the Bay River would be, for speckled trout, I would say the Bay River. I'll break it up in a couple categories. So speckled trout, I would probably say Bay River. It just depends on the time of the year, from the mouth of Bay River all the way to where it ends. And then the noose, I fish a lot on the noose for stripers. Not much anymore because we don't have a season on them, and try not to beat them up too bad because they're trying to protect them. But the noose is great for redfish and stuff. But yeah, so then probably for flounder, I would have to say Core Sound or Harker's Island area. That would be probably for flounder and for redfish. There's a lot of good opportunities around Harker's Island for topwater redfish, which is hard. It's hard to beat topwater redfish. So that would probably be two of my favorites anyway.
Yeah.
Catching any fish on topwater that has a terminal mouth is just special. It's just
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So this is probably going to be your toughest one to answer. You have to narrow it down to one lure. What's your favorite lure to throw?
You can include flies too if you want to, but that broadens it, so it might make it more difficult.
I'll do one fly and I'll do one conventional tackle. No question on. I mean, it is pretty close, honestly, but probably a Head Super Spook Junior would probably be my favorite conventional tackle. They catch everything. I mean, you can catch anything on a Super Spook. I mean, I've caught everything from bluegill to overslot drum. So
You don't have to answer this, but are you a clear person or a bone person?
I don't have one in here. Bone chrome is the pinnacle for me. But I will say another color I use a lot is black with a chartreuse head. That's a really good saltwater color for redfish and speckled trout and stripers too. And then probably for a fly, would have to be. I mean, there's thousands of fly patterns, but obviously one I developed from the example of others would be a hollow fly, which I don't know how much anyone up here knows about flies or anything in general, but so basically a hollow fly is made mostly with bucktail, and just because of the composition of bucktail, every tail is different, and you can customize the profile of however you want your hollow fly to be, using different characteristics of bucktail. Like in this particular one, I'll give a shout out to Midwest Bucktail. If anybody wants to buy bucktail, I got this particular bucktail from Midwest Bucktail. And so for the tail section, you use like long, more straight fibers because they have the most like delicate movement in the water. And then basically the closer you get to the head of the fly, you start building more bulk to disturb the water, and then the tail will swim better. And basically the reason a hollow fly I'd have to say would be my favorite is because like this is like almost a 9-inch fly. And again, so this is another kind of a hollow fly example with a different head, but these are both the 9-inch flies. So that's like a huge fly. I mean, a bull drum would eat this, or a tarpon, maybe. I don't tarpon fish, but I assume a tarpon would eat that, or a cobia or something like that. That can be a cobia can be 90 pounds. So, but I can throw this hollow fly on an 8-weight fly rod because of how sparsely it's tied. I don't know if you can see. You can see my hand behind the bucktail. So you can make them as small as you want, but you can build a really big profile with not a lot of material, and it's still very castable. But once it hits the water, it makes this huge profile that is a perfect. This is like a menhaden profile, but I'd say a hollow fly would probably be my favorite fly.
Absolutely. And I will say that if any of y'all are interested in looking to see what these flies look like in the water, over at it's 43_2 fishing on Instagram. They have some awesome videos showing that, and uh, there's a few of them that you watch it and you do not believe that thing's not alive until he pulls it out of the water. So
There's a lot of people. I tie a lot of flies, but I'm very entry level compared to some people. I mean, the hollow fly pattern is not one that I developed. I didn't say one that I developed. I did say one that I developed. I meant to say one that I tied, but this is a Bob Popovich's pattern that has been around for before I was born, and it's been catching fish since he invented it. So if you want to see a true hollow fly, go look at. There's tons of people that tie them, but Bob Popovich is the person that invented this, and there's a bunch of people that have gone a long ways with what he developed. So, yeah, I'm not a hollow fly master, but it's an awesome pattern. So,
absolutely. And last but not least, man, what is your favorite time of year to fish?
That's another hard question. For sheep's head, I'd say now. For speckled trout, I would say January. And for red drum, I have to say now. Yeah, definitely the fall would be my favorite. Fall winter months was definitely my favorite. It's just you can catch anything in the fall and winter months. There's a lot you can do in North Carolina. Yeah, I would say, yeah, November to January would be my sweet spot.
Absolutely. That's interesting. I would have thought this was a little late for sheep's head, but
Well, I mean, it depends.
How much I know.
It depends on where you are. They will start moving kind of offshore and to deeper structure pretty soon, but in the next couple months. But you can catch them year round in North Carolina. Like people catch them at Radio Island area a lot, like around the port and stuff like that in the winter months. But it is harder, to get bait and stuff. I've never fished for them in the winter, just because I'm trout fishing a lot then. But you can do it. You just got to be willing to go get your feet and hands soaking wet catching bait in the winter. So I got the jigs if you go catch the bait.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, man, we are going to start wrapping things up. If you would let us know, what do you have coming up for you and for 43_2 fishing?
Well, for me, I mean, like I said, I'm a full-time engineer. I don't feel led to leave my job at that to pursue 43_2 fishing at this point in my life. I'm not saying it'll never happen, but I have an awesome job. I work with awesome people, and I love my job. So I don't have, with my career, I'm not close to going full-time 43_2 fishing yet. But I've had people that some tackle shops that have reached out to me that are interested in stocking my products. So hopefully over the next year or two, I'll get a few more tackle shops under my belt. They're a lot of places are in a rush to get product when they get up with you. And normally it's because somebody else that they have supplying for them is not doing what they want. So they want something yesterday. And, being a one-man show essentially that works 50 hours a week already and has a family, the only time I have is before he wakes up on the weekends and after he goes to bed on the weekends. So that's when I can be very productive in those 2 hours before he wakes up and 2 hours after he goes to bed. But that's kind of where I'm at with 43.2 and my career. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I wanted to give you an open floor to shout out any sponsors or supporters or anybody you want to say thank you to, all of that good stuff. Go ahead and go for it.
Well, I don't have any sponsors currently. I will say that a couple stores in Eastern North Carolina that have some of my products, Dudley's Marina in Swansboro, they have my sheep's head jigs, and then Eastern Outfitters in Hampstead, they have some of my sheep's head jigs and some of my dress treble hooks there. So, if you're in the area, go in there and support local businesses instead of ordering on Amazon. But yeah, I'd like to shout out on everybody that has purchased products from me. It helps me out, and I love doing it and love hearing stories from everybody that use my products. So shout out to everybody that's supported me in that way, and hope everybody keeps doing well with anything that I make them. And if not, let me know, and I'll do whatever I can to make it right. So,
absolutely. And if our listeners want to follow you and to find your tackle and stuff, where do they find you?
So Instagram and Facebook, 43:2 fishing on Facebook, 43_2 fishing on Instagram, and then I have a website that is a skeleton of a website that I need to go and put a lot of inventory in, but it's just kind of one of them things. I'm not a super tech savvy, and I'm working on a website, but it'll drop eventually whenever I have the time to do it. But I like making tackle better than I like making websites, so we'll see kind of where that goes. But yeah, I'd say Instagram and Facebook. Message me anytime, and if you have questions, even if you don't want to buy tackle, I love talking fishing, so hopefully I can help somebody out, or if you have questions about anything at all, just reach out. Absolutely.
Well, Travis, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've enjoyed catching up and talking saltwater fishing, which is something we don't typically do a lot of up here. So I always enjoy it any chance to get.
Yeah, man, I had a blast. We'll do it again sometime.
That was awesome.
For sure.
Good deal.
With 30 years of experience of handcrafting lures under his belt, Mr. B of Mr. B Lure Company is making high-quality spinnerbaits, buzzbaits, jigs, underspins, swim blades, and more right here in the U.S. All of his skirts are hand-tied, and all of his baits feature a baked-on powder paint, all metal components, and only Owner and Gamakatsu hooks. All of his baits come in a variety of colors, and if you purchase a bait in the Battle Shad color, 30% of the proceeds go to the Wounded Warrior Project. To see the quality for yourself, go to MrBLureCompany.com, that's MRBLureCompany.com, to place your order and use promo code FAITHPOD1X10 at checkout to save 10% on your first order. Get Outdoors Pedal and Paddle in Greensboro, North Carolina offers a wide range of products and services designed to help protect the environment and enhance the time people spend enjoying the outdoors. With an expansive year-round inventory of kayaks, SUPs, bikes, kayak fishing accessories, paddling clothing, biking accessories, and more, Get Outdoors has established itself as one of the top paddle sports and biking shops in the Southeast. They also offer a wide range of kayak safety and technique courses to get you comfortable in your new boat. They'll even get it rigged up for you. Stop by the shop in Greensboro, North Carolina, or check them out at shopgetoutdoors.com.
Well, I think Cam had to go do some daddy duty, so I will wrap this episode up. It was awesome having Travis on. We saw a lot of some of the same themes that we've seen in recent weeks, and just finding peace out on the water, and being thankful for what we get to do day in and day out, and the opportunities we have to get out in the outdoors and enjoy fishing and hunting. Can't thank Travis enough. That was a pretty cool conversation. And also to just make sure go visit Omnia Fishing. Again, that the code for that is FNF15. It's good for 15% off your first order. We mentioned it before, but I'll mention it one last time. You can check out Cam's ambassador profile, the lakes he fishes. Check out my ambassador profile on omnia.com. And anything you need or any questions you have, you can always reach out to us. But we appreciate you guys joining us, and appreciate y'all's support. And we'll see you next time.